Hi, and good day. This is lecture number 11 for the course Agricultural and Biosystems Structures Engineering. The topic will be on the criteria, okay, the standards or criteria for various agricultural and biosystems buildings and structures. Now, to start off, okay, the very concept of designs of agricultural and biosystem structures and buildings is the consideration of the farm. So a farmer would be operating or producing livestock or animals and crops in a farming system whereby there is a need for buildings throughout the operations. There are also common structures and buildings which are in support of the operations. In most cases, okay, farmers would have their abode or their homes within this farm, and the buildings and structures inside within the premises of the farm is or collectively called the farmstead. And so you have the housing, the home of the farmer inside that or contained in the farmstead. And basically the the construction of these designs would entail um, also the other fields of agricultural and biosystems engineering, from the design of machines or mechanisms, and the electrification, and likewise the plumbing and irrigation. Here in this course, the idea is for the student to be able to construct the building and structures in terms of the loads, in terms of their structural concerns. It is beyond the the concern of the course to detail the mechanisms or the equipment and facilities that are uh, maintained or housed in these buildings and structures. Now, the the these topics will be covered in succeeding courses. Uh, for example, in electrification and control systems, this will be tackled in that subject. Another is on HVAC, or heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, which is a part or covered in the course environmental control engineering. Now, since the structural basics have been covered in the past lectures already, from um, concerning the different parts of the buildings and structures, from the beams, okay, from the roofing to the beams and trusses, to the uh, columns or posts, to the walls, down to the flooring and the foundations and the earth movement. So now the topic will be on the uh, the the design criteria for uh, the the buildings and structures in a in a farmstead. To begin, we have the farmhouse. Now, the farmhouse is, well, similar to a residential house within a residential community or a subdivision, for example. These this have infinite possibilities. The imagination is the limit um, as to the design of a farmhouse. So in fact, there still has to be a standard to along this for this kind of building. Thus, the the agricultural and biosystems engineer, or the student taking the program to become one is enjoined to read further on the National Building Code of the Philippines to further enhance the ideas or the standards dedicated for a farmhouse. But as to the aesthetics, as to the design, as to the components, they still form part of the basics. So they have the basic components, for example, the beams, okay, the trusses, and so on and so forth. But as to um, the aesthetics, again, the imagination is the limit. So as long as it's possible, doable, well, in most cases, actually, the farmhouse would be based on practical uses or utility, as long as it is able to perform, okay, the basic functions as needed in the farmstead. Okay, the farmhouse is um, is able to, or is fit for being one. It is actually the abode of the farmer. Thus, it should be able to house the farmer, accommodate guests if possible. Um, it could be such that the farm house is situated in the periphery or in the middle of the farmstead. It would depend on the decision maker, which is, or who is the farmer or the owner of the farm. So with that granted, we have next the animal housing. And in this regard, we have two kinds of um, animals that are covered. Okay, two categories. Although we have, I think, probably five or more animal types concerned. But in general, okay, we have the livestock and poultry. Now, livestock is further subdivided into three. You have your swine and small ruminants and the large ruminants. Small ruminants cover the hooved animals, but are smaller. Okay, so these are the goats, the sheep's, what else? Lambs or other ruminants. So when you say ruminants, they eat grass, and then they have the usual four uh, stomachs in their um, digestive system. So next is the large ruminants. So bigger ones, so still hooved animals. You have your carabaos and the cattle. Next is in poultry. There are two. You have your broiler. So for broiler, the focus of production is meat. So you produce or you grow chickens for meat. You have also layer, and this entails production for egg. Okay, so egg. There are other kinds of fowl that would be housed in various animal housing, but it's just that these two are those that have the existing standards, and thus we have the basis for the criteria of such buildings. Now let's take a look at the standards, the individual standards. Let's proceed first with the housing for swine production. This is under livestock. Now there are a lot of entries here that, well, you would have the definitions. The student or the learner is expected to know of this based on the course that they have taken previously on animal science. So farrowing, okay, what's that? That's the term for swine. Okay, swine giving birth. Others, litter, okay, litter index, these are supposedly terms that the student or learner is already familiar with. So let's proceed with the requirements, okay, that are required for the structure. Okay, generally structure, but we have here a building because this is a housing for swine. So we will be talking of the requirements of the structure or the building specifically, as they are in relation to the structural requirements such as location. Okay, we'll also go through the types of design. This one, okay. But okay, for structural requirements, we will go through the roof, okay, the very basic components, and again, to stress out this concern or concept is that for those statements or provisions which have shall in their in their construction, it means that these are a mandatory requirements. For those that have should, okay, or may, these are recommendatory. So while this is the best, if ever, this is that such statement, okay, or requirement remains recommendatory in provision or in degree, right? So after a roof, we're going down. We have the ceiling, okay, we have the walls, and then the floors, and okay, we have also the foundation, okay, and the design of the floor itself. Okay, right. So let's have the first the different housing systems. Okay? You have your one unit system. Again, um, the livestock would have different steps in during its life cycle. So you would start with a piglet, and it grows into the sow eventually. So here in a one unit system, you have a gestating house. Okay? So a a what do I say this? A female swine, okay, will be farrowing in this or gestating inside this house, and then farrowing in another house, okay, giving birth in another house. So the sow will be moving over back to the gestation location. So this is a location where, okay, there are only two steps. So the pigs, okay, remain in the same building from farrowing until they reach the desired weight for slaughtering. So there are only two buildings required. So one for gestation and one for farrowing. There's also a two-unit system, and this introduces another building, the growing and finishing house. So the farrow, okay, after giving birth, is returned to the station or gestating house, while the buildings are transferred to this growing finishing house. Now, what's the difference? So in this two-unit system, you would have the pigs, okay, or the sow, okay, those that are okay, or are possible to give birth. They could be impregnated at immediately after giving birth, right? So that's the concept. Or if you have a lot of heads, number of heads of sow, then they could be impregnated immediately after giving birth, so that the uh, weanlings, when they have been weaned, okay, and the sow that has given birth first, can be moved over back to the gestating house, and the those that have given birth are going to give birth are transferred to the farrowing house immediately. So there's a continuous cycle compared to the first system, where the pigs would have to wait another cycle before they could, or the sow could give birth. Okay? They have to wait another cycle. For the three-unit system, you have a nursery house introduced in between the farrowing and the growing finishing house. That's the difference. Again, this step would have a significant effect into the number of the or the number of heads of swine that could be maintained inside the system. So a 4-unit system now introduces or divides the growing system and the finishing system. So the growing house and the finishing house would have uh, different locations. Well, they're nearby or they're located together, but they would introduce another building that would increase the capacity of the system. So in the construction of this system, for the location, okay, should the location shall conform to the land use plan of the area. The site shall be accessible to service roads, water supply, and electric lines, meaning for service roads, they should be near the. All right, I might have been lost a while ago. Problem with the recording. Anyway, proceeding with the discussion. Okay, so you have here the location. Okay, shall be well drained and allows for free air circulation. This is for ventilation purposes. The building shall be constructed in east-west orientation. Again, this is to avoid the radiation from the sun. So heating is minimized. Thus, well, this would require less energy to remove heat from the structures. And the structure for marketable animals shall be located near the service road. The site shall be located where prevailing winds will not carry odors to the farmhouse. All right, so again, the requirements for the building are provided in table 1. So before we proceed with the roof system, let's just talk about this space requirements. So in this setup, right, the space requirement per animal, this is in m squared per animal or per head, is okay. This is correlated to the weight of the animal. So at which stage it is possible to identify the maximum area that can be allocated. For example, 20 heads per growing cycle. So this will be multiplied by 10 if this is in the winding stage. Okay, so or until until growing stage. Okay, so that should be updated or determined for every house that is in the system, if ever there are a lot of houses to be maintained. Okay, for example, in the 4-unit system. Now there are further recommendations for the values to be used for bores. Okay, this is the source of the semen for the impregnation of the sow. You're gestating sows, so more space is required. And then individual pens, okay, and the dry sows. Let's proceed to the roofing. Okay, these are recommendatory, so any material could be used, but it is the best option to make use of corrugated GI sheets and at least 1 meter roof overhang. Okay, this is mandatory, shall be provided to ensure shade and to protect the swine from the rain. So the overhang is the space. Okay, apologies, I think I lost my screen. Right, sorry. Okay, I'm still looking at this one, right? So a while ago I was showing the requirements for the location. Here they are, and then I proceeded with the space requirements, and then now I'm tackling the roofing. Okay. So roof, okay, this should be equipped with gutters. So this is recommendatory. Okay. And there are types of roofs for the system for the housing. It could be semi-monitor, semi-shed, monitor type, and the double span and the shed. Okay. For the ceiling, okay, this is optional, but at least 2.4 meters if ever. Okay. Walls shall have a minimum height of 1 meter and shall be made of durable materials. For the floors, solid floors, okay, shall be concrete and paved on a well-compacted gravel field. Floor shall be skid resistant with 2 to 4% slope towards a gutter or drainage canal. The direction of the slope shall be away from the feeding trough, meaning the feeding trough is where the feeds uh, are placed for the growing of the for the growing of the sow, or for the growing of the swine. For the slotted floors, okay, these are recommendatory to be made of concrete, plastic, metals, or any combinations. But it shall be constructed to allow manure and urine to pass through. The slats will be further discussed, okay, here, right? So the slotted floors shall be constructed to allow manure and urine to pass through, and the recommended slat width and spacing between is given in table 2, depending on the stage of the pigs or the swine. So this has to be referred to because this is as required by 7.4.2.2. Okay, in partially slatted floors, the slat shall be placed perpendicular to the long dimensions of the pens. And okay, but for slatted floors, totally slatted floors, slat should be placed parallel to the sow. Okay, this is for a totally slatted floor. Concrete slats shall be used preferably for swine over 30 kilograms. These animals continuously defecate and urinate, so these have to be facilitated by this construction of the slats. So the recommended specifications for the concrete slats are shown. You have the top width and the depth and the span, okay, the length of that, and also the reinforcing bar to be maintained or to be inserted in to attach the concrete, okay, together. So depending on the length, okay, you would have a certain width and depth, okay, to be maintained. So here's a schematic for the concrete slat design, right? So for swine under 20 kilograms, flattened expanded metal should be used. This is for figure 8, okay? And supporting joists shall be spaced at 300 millimeters. Expanded metal shall be treated to prevent corrosion. Sharp edges shall be avoided. In most cases, the structure would be involving a lot or using a lot of water, and most of the time the location or the place is wet. Thus, okay, this is a mandatory provision that the metal shall be treated to prevent corrosion. If possible, stainless steel could be used. Okay, welded wire flooring shall be made of 5.3 meter. This is a 5 gauge wire spaced at 12.5 millimeters, 15 millimeters, and 18 millimeters. It shall be supported every 300 millimeters. Plastic flooring shall be coated with rough surface. Fiberglass reinforced T-sluts should be used. Okay, this is recommendatory. But the sluts shall be 38 meters wide and sluts shall be 9 millimeters. Okay, the sluts is referring to the protruding portions, right? And figure 7 details this. In particular the rebars or the reinforcing bars within this slat. Okay, the slot with an O refers to the spaces. Okay. Now, for the functional requirements, this is actually still part of the structure because these are fixed, okay, to the structure, and if ever fixed or could be partially fixed, okay, with bolts and nuts, but still these are required. So you have your farrowing pens, which have the design as shown in figure 9. Okay, You have also the recommended dimensions of a farrowing crate. This should avoid the cases where the sow, okay, would crush the piglets, okay, because of the weight, okay, of the mother. The piglets could be crushed. There are also pens for winners nursery, and it is recommended that the winners with the same size should be housed in a pen or cage. This is more on management more than structural. So this uh, shall not be form part shall not form part of the um, structural requirements. Okay, the size of each pen should be designed to hold not more than 25 growers. So this should be part of that mandatory requirement. Stating pen, okay, this is more of recommendatory. Bore pens, okay, pen for bores, okay, should be located close to the dry sow accommodation. Still recommendatory. So for the pen partition, the slot shall be within the range of 160 millimeters to 210 millimeters. The minimum height, okay, of pen partitions is shown in table 5. This is still dependent on the weight of the swine. So if one could notice, this is the design requirements, particularly in dimensional specifications, are based on the weight of the animal. Fittings and internal surfaces to which the animals have access should not have sharp edges or projections. This is to protect the animal. Okay, and surfaces shall not be treated with paints that may cause illness or death. Okay. And the pen gate, the dimension of the gate shall be 600 millimeters wide and 0.9 meters to 1 meter high. For winning, a height of 750 millimeters shall be used. Okay. Primary and secondary walkways shall have a minimum width of 1.5 meters and 1 meter, respectively. And for the equipment facilities, okay, these are to be operational required. Okay, your heaters, your feeding facilities, okay, watering facilities. Still, there are mandatory requirements here, and this is more of for the management and operation already. But still to be considered in the construction, depending on the or affecting the load requirements or the load, okay, of the system that is being designed, which is a house for swine. Lighting, this is covered, but already part of electrification control systems. Ventilation is part of environmental control engineering, similar to mechanical ventilation. Okay. So done with the structural, okay, still you have your optional facilities for storage. This could be accommodated to contain your feeds and supplies. And then lastly, for waste disposal, this is pertaining to the AS 414, which is on waste management structures, and to be discussed later in 2 weeks' time. Okay, so we have here the annexes A to C, okay, and these are provided for the computations for first the number of pens required, depending on the occupancy period of the animals in a certain location. So this would simplify, okay, the number of pens required. So this should be considered very much, okay, and shall form part of the criteria, okay, to determine if the structure is or the structure or the building specifically conforms to standards. All right, next is we have housing for the ruminants. Okay, we have two, one for the small ruminants and one for the large ruminants, particularly dairy cattle. Now, proceeding, okay, again, the terms of references are provided, and the student or learner of the course is expected to know of this already. What is a doe? What is a buck? What is a lamb? Okay, what is a ewe? And ram? Okay, Location, similar to the first structure for sign, similar. You have the same considerations for such, and they are mandatory. You have your type of housing. You have your shed type. Okay, you have here the front view of that, and the pen barn type, right? Shed type, and then okay, you have only two. And for the barn type, pen barn type, you have two types under it: stall barns and the confined housing, which are shown in a while in the drawings. In confined housing, group pens for animals with the same sizes should be constructed and provided with an ample area for exercise. The feeding trough should be fenced off with bamboo or wooden slats, providing ample space that will enable the animals to insert only its head. This will prevent the animal from stepping or trampling the grasses. Watering devices should be placed in an area where spilled water will not mess up the pen. So this statement is recommendatory in degree, similar to the first two, right? For the shed type and the stall barn. Now, for the space requirements, similar to the previous discussion on swine, the animal weight uh, is correlated to the space requirement of the animal. Similar for the size, right? For smaller small ruminants and large small ruminants. Okay. Now for the structural requirements, uh, this is different, but you have the same concept as slotted floor, and this is to facilitate again the movement of the wastes of the animal from the feces to the urine. Okay. So the slot should be 70 to 100 millimeters wide, 25 to 30 millimeters thick, and should be laid with slot space of 10 to 25 millimeters. Okay. Or, okay, this could be steel as shown. Okay. This is figure 4. Okay. Or the slotted floor shall be at least 1 meter above the ground. The floor underneath the slotted floor should be either concrete or rammed earth floor that slopes towards the drainage. The concrete floor shall have a minimum slope of 2%, and the earth floor shall have a minimum slope of 4%. For concrete floor, it shall be skid resistant and well drained. The floor slope should be 2 to 4%. Right. For the roof, okay, adequate roofing shall be provided against rain and intense heat from the sun. Okay, again, similar, there should be an eaves, the eaves for the eave shall be at least 2 meters, and the height of the rear eave shall be at least 1.5 meters. For adequate ventilation, roof slope shall not be less than 25%. If roofing is made of indigenous materials, the minimum roof slope shall be 58%. Adequate walling shall be provided against rain, and a clearance of 150 to 200 millimeters between floor to wall and wall to beam should be provided. Okay, this is recommendatory. For functional requirements, okay, you have the different parts, pens for pen barn type housing, okay, and the various mandatory requirements are provided. Height of pen wall and gate shall vary according to breed, but shall not be less than 1.2 meters. Okay, the pen wall made of cyclone wire, metal bars, and wooden slats, and you have also for galvanized welded or woven mesh, okay, as shown in figure 5. The fittings, okay, and internal surfaces shall not have sharp edges or projections to protect the animal from cuts, okay, or other accidents. Surfaces shall not be treated with paints, okay, that may harm the animal. A brooder box shall be provided for newly born kids' lambs, okay. Well, if you're going to look at this functional requirements, okay, this is our operational requirements. These are affecting the design of the building in terms of the parametric concerns or the load of the building, because they shall form part of the live loads, or even the dead loads if they are fixed, even if they are temporarily fixed, okay, by bolts or nuts. They could be fixed permanently if they are built into the the flooring or the building via, for example, a concrete connection. Okay, over there, filled in with concrete. Okay, feeding troughs and hay racks. Okay, again, this is a ruminant, so they eat grasses. Okay? And then there's the watering facility provided for. Okay? You have the dimensions of the watering facility or the water trough. Well, should be preferably concrete, but any material would do if ever. In an open tank drinking system, okay, there is a requirement 300 millimeters of space for each 15 to 25 head. This is to, well, they would move around the place, but this is to accommodate more animals needing to drink. Okay. In an automatic watering system, one bowl or nipple shall be provided for every 50 heads. And watering devices shall be placed in an area where spilled water is easily drained. This is to avoid ponding and to avoid soiling the place. For free range, apron around the water shall be paved or packed with gravel or at least 750 millimeters width. Now, the apron is the approach. Okay, it's the approach towards a location. So this is to avoid, okay, the mud, okay, or yeah, mud to form within the vicinity of the waterer. Because if water, okay, mixes with the soil, it will form mud. Okay. Breeding facilities, this is optional. Actually, in most modern systems, the breeding facility is still separate from the buildings. In fact, in integrated systems, okay, you would have the grower where the swine or these animals, ruminants, are grown, is very far from the location of the breeding facility, and that is I think the most, okay, profitable setup, maybe because this is the setup that is with these integrators. Okay? The businesses that are have enough investment, okay, so that they could grow, okay, and distribute the growing of this livestock to in various locations, okay, or what we call contract growing. Okay, so this breeding facilities is optional, and also another is the milking area, but the recommended dimensions and design of such is provided. Now again, lighting is still part of the functional requirements. Okay, field fencing, yes, still part of the additional requirements. Waste disposal should conform to the standard 414/2002 of the Philippine Agricultural and Biosystems Engineering Standards. So Annex A to Annex B provides details from the floor plan to the lighting requirements. Next, okay, you have the for dairy cattle, and very much similar to the previous one on ruminants, we forgo the other initial requirements because they're very much the same. Again, space requirement is provided in table 1. One has to look up the size of the animal based on the space they occupy, and then multiply this to the number to get the maximum number of space required. Okay, for structural requirements, somehow similar. Okay, you have still the floor, the roof, the pen wall. Okay, and well, the functional requirements that would be meeting also the mandatory requirements are to be looked up as well. Okay. Design of the watering facility or the feeding trough are quite the same to the ruminant. Okay. And you have also the same optional requirements. Now we proceed with the housing for broiler. Okay. This is for chickens to be grown for the meat. Okay. Again, the definition of terms, in terms of references, the student or learner is expected to know of this already. So you have now a different growing cycle compared to the previous two, which are how do you say this? These are swine and ruminants, and then you have now fowl. So you have the animal starting out as a chick, okay, and it grows to a um, uh, a chicken, okay. So same considerations for the location, okay, conform to the land use plan, okay, accessible to service roads. You have the same actually because this still is an animal housing. The classification could be similar still, but well, you have your classifications according to type of roof, the type of floor, and according to the type of enclosure. Okay. And there's also another one that I'd recommend to consider here. You have also the design, environmental control. You would have your conventional, or the traditional housing, which would have the open air in the ambient air conditions. So the building is freely ventilated. Okay, you have open air ventilation. There's also the climate control system, or the CCS, or which they call also tunnel ventilation, because because of the very long design of the structure or the building, it looks like a tunnel, and you have fans at one end, okay, sucking the air out, sucking the air inside, outside to the outside, and you have cooling pads on one end, so that the air is the temperature of the air, or the air properties, particularly the psychrometric properties of the air, are improved. Okay. Well, with evaporative cooling, the air temperature is reduced, okay, by how this is latent heat. No, sensible cooling. Okay, sensible cooling. The student is well directed to learn more of that in the environmental control engineering, where psychrometry is discussed. Okay, so space requirements, again similar. You would have this as the requirement: 6.25 per m squared for 1,000 birds. Okay, and you have the stage. Okay? This is not on the weight, but the stage, or the age of the bird. And now, actually, in production, okay, the longest time that the birds are inside is actually 35 days. Difference is that well, the animal is actually, or the bird is actually grown during this stage, but still considered a juvenile. And well, the it is because of the requirement of the market. In the US, where Americans like their birds bigger, so they harvest more than 60 days, I think. So that's the difference. But because in the Philippines, okay, the Filipinos like it their chicken small, and particularly maybe because the meat is tastier when it's well, smaller. So it goes fluffier or bigger, then the meat loses its savor, save, flavor or savoriness. Right. So for the structural requirements, this is still the focus of this course. You have the roof, the ceiling, the walls, the doors, the floors, the slatted floor again, and the functional requirements comes after. But again, okay, should be taken into consideration that again, the shall are mandatory, while the should are recommendatory. Okay. So for the roofing, okay, roof structures will be designed to carry additional dead loads, such as suspended feeders. If you have feeders which are suspended, so meaning if you have suspended feeders, the suspended feeders are for automated feeding of the birds. But if it's going to be manual, then you have your feeders distributed throughout the the whole area or space of the building. So ceiling shall be at least 2.4 meters high. The walls, okay, these are recommendatory. You have entrance doors at least 900 millimeters wide by 2 meters high, because okay, this should facilitate the entry of equipment if ever there is a requirement. Doors between pens shall be hung in pairs and be made to swing in both directions so that feed and litter carriers can be pushed through from either direction. Floors is you have a slatted floor, and then also another is the litter type floor. Okay, litter material shall be light in weight, have a medium particle size, highly absorbent, dry rapidly, soft and incompressible, low thermal conductivity, inexpensive. Now, these are operational actually in concern, and thus this will be part of the uh, management or functional requirements, and will be uh, removed from the structural, because this is, well, you would have the litter removed from one growing cycle to another. Okay. Floor support shall be designed to carry concentrated load such as the maximum total weight of the birds. Okay. If there are 10,000 birds, then you have to multiply that by the maximum weight of possible 2 kilos, then that's 20,000 kilos, right? So the functional requirements, these are all required, okay? Because again, this is just a growing facility, okay? The hatchery where the eggs are hatched is a different design, and this is beyond the coverage of the available standards or criteria that there are. Okay, that we're still waiting for such a standard to be released by the authorities. Okay, right. Artificial light. This is covered by electrification, probably, or if ever, okay, should be also identified in the design if skylight is to be used. And then you have your recommended brooding temperature. These are more of functional in requirements, but here you still have the aisles and walkways, and shall be at least 1 meter wide. Okay. They should be looked at. Okay. Equipment and facilities, feeders, okay, they are to be considered again as they affect the parametric considerations of the design, particularly in the weight of live loads, because these are but they are non-fixed items inside the building. Okay, round feeders. Okay, if there are, if this there are no automatic feeders. Okay, then there is the requirement for the number of feeders. Okay, and the waterers, they shall also be per number of birds depending on the age of the birds. For lighting and ventilation, okay, these are to be covered particularly in the courses of electrification and environmental control management. Next stop is the housing for their production, and okay, again similar considerations, okay, or requirements, mandatory requirements for the location, but a different classification. You have the pen and the cage, because now instead of harvesting the eggs, harvesting the chickens themselves for the meat, the eggs are harvested. So you have your pen and cage type, and then you have your type of flooring, litter, slotted, slot, litter. So combination of the two. Okay. Now the floor space requirement differs from the previous one. You have your growing, okay, and then the laying, okay, and it changes because, okay, the chickens are expected to mature. Again, the chickens can really, lay eggs without the need for fertilization. So actually, the eggs are haploid in insects. Okay, insects. So they are haploid. So they just have the X chromosomes in them. So just one set. I'm not familiar with how many chromosomes are there in the X chromosome of the female. So I don't know. I have no idea. For humans, it's 46. I don't know with with chickens. So cage type you have here, okay? The minimum space requirement for birds in cages shall be 5 m² per 100 birds, okay? For the structural requirements, you have the same entries for the roof, for the ceiling, for the walls, for the doors, and for the floors if they're slotted, and then the litter type, okay? This has to be required. Okay, the width of the slats shall be 25 to 50 millimeters, and the space in between slats shall be 25 to 30 millimeters. On top of the slats, plastic net or fish net with 25 millimeter hole shall be used. If whether wire is used, okay, should have 625. This is recommendatory, but the wire shall be supported every 100 millimeters. The slats or wire floors shall be constructed in sections so that they may be removed when it is necessary to clean the droppings from under them, or when the house is cleaned, and the floor shall be elevated at least 900 millimeters from the ground, and the posts, okay, this is recommendatory, should have a diameter of at least 200 millimeters. Litter material, again, this is from the previous, I'm just reiterating that this is, again, from one growing cycle to another, but still part of the parametric considerations in the live loads of the building. Okay? For the functional requirements, this details the non-stationary, okay, the non-stationary equipment that has to be considered inside a structure or the building. The pen size, okay, the laying cage, and thus, okay, if a designer of this building will be looking into the dimensions, then these are commercially available, so that one could just look them up over the internet, okay, for possible specifications, specifically on the weight, right? So this could be referred to by the designer or the engineer. Okay? The nest, okay, this could be constructed but still available commercially and could be determined of the weight if ever. Okay, it could be also completed from the materials to be used, such as, for example, wood or plywood. Okay, you have two kinds of nest. You have your individual nest, and then you have your community nest. Okay, the nest facilitates the collection of the eggs because you have the hens inside the nest. Okay, aisles and walkways, okay, where carts are used for feeding and egg gathering, provide a clear passage of 800 millimeters between cage rows and to the limited walls. Okay, at the end walls, 2.4 meters clear passage shall be provided. Now, for other facilities and equipment, you have your feeders, okay, and the waters, right? And then the lighting and the ventilation. So that would be all. And in the next discussion or lecture, greenhouses will be discussed. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.